Hello, welcome. Today we are talking why Agile needs more collaborative modeling. It's quite an interesting question, and maybe I ask you a question. What do you have in your head, in your mind, when you hear the word collaborative modeling? Anybody want to shout out? Post-its.
Post-its, okay. Yes, that's a good one.
Anything else? Okay. Miro, okay.
Miro, yes.
Yeah, Miro?
We are already using it.
Yeah. We are using it today, Miro. Great tool. Okay, let's go into the topic. So when we are, Martin and me, when we're thinking about collaborative modeling, it's not only about the post-its and the tools like Miro, it's about all the stuff which is happening when doing collaborative modeling. It's about the learning, the brainstorming, the experimenting, the discovering, the evaluating of options, but also to making decisions. So it's all about around it and the thing that we are working together. So we started with this question, why collaborative modeling? And there is something which we have brought today. It's about brain research.
Which is actually a German-speaking slide, we must mention. So, and there's a reason for it.
Yeah. So, as you have heard, I'm also a lecturer at FH Campus Wien, and I had the honor to learn also there something non-technical stuff. So, how to learn and how to help our students to learn better. And this is from this lecture I took there last year. And what this picture wants to tell us is this is the percentage of the nerves in our brain which are connected to our ears, to our eyes. It's about smelling and all these kind of things. And this is the percentage of the nerves where the brain is interconnected. So when I'm talking to you, this is the amount of nerves which are now working, hearing, understanding what I'm telling. And when I'm asking you a question, and you're thinking about the question, then this is about this percent of the brain working. This is the idea of this slide.
Yeah, when Daniel showed me that, I kind of thought, now I know why I am an introvert. Because there's...
Yeah. So the thing we should mention, we want this brain power when we are working together. This is the important message from this slide. So if we recapitulate how we are working today, or how we have worked in the past, this is this typical situation. Somebody is telling us what to do. 0.0% of our nerves. Okay, we have to do something. What we want instead is, we want to tell somebody what we want to achieve, and force the other to ask questions. What then happens is that our brain starts to think about which question should I ask, okay? And then our brain starts to think, to work, to construct something in our head, to build up a model about the stuff which we are talking. And this is quite interesting because there is where we see collaborative modeling really, really helps us to use this brain type of power instead to this 0.01% of our nerves. So, if you combine the stuff, this is where Martin and we are seeing collaborative modeling has his home. And collaboration means we are working together. And if we think of we are working in a group, that means that we have multiple brains using this kind of power together. And together building up new stuff, this is really the power of the brain we can use. So much for the theory. Maybe to mention, we will share this Miro board after the session, so you don't need to take pictures, you will all have the stuff here. So we talked now about the why. And the why is great, but also it's important about how to do the stuff, how to work together. And there are lots of collaborative modeling tools outside in the world. These are only some of them. And what we want to do now is to go into some of these methods and to try to show you how this can work, how we can do this in practice, use the big part of the brain instead of the small part of the brain. And therefore, now I want to give over the word to Martin.
Hey, thank you. Yes, so thank you, Daniel, for this small intro. And I now want to show you one out of many collaborative modeling tools we can use. So there is this umbrella term, collaborative modeling. And storytelling is one such method. And actually, I'm nowadays using storytelling in a little bit, my own variant. So I adapted it over the years. And this is what I want to show you here. And I want to do it with a very practical example. Probably everybody knows about a stadium. You see football games are probably carried out here. And yes, of course, before we can carry out a football game, many things for sure will need to be organized. So I want to look at this stadium more as an organization, maybe even a commercial organization, a company, doesn't matter. But for sure we will have some potential customers, the visitors of our games, of course. So I have a sticky note for them over there. And then we, of course, also have employees, like, for example, the ticket cashier, who is selling tickets. So this is our scenario here. And let's also imagine, we are kind of in charge to implement a new or an adapted ticketing system. So not Jira, but about selling football tickets, so this kind of stuff. Now, software people may now kind of directly associate, okay, I have to implement a system, so we need to define requirements, right? Yes, this is kind of true. But then, of course, in order to do this really well, we need to gain a better understanding. We need to understand the business processes which need to be supported here. We need probably also put ourselves a little bit into the shoes of our customers and our users and understand how do they actually work nowadays, and even more important, how could they then work in the future? Maybe with the help of our system. So we really need to gain understanding about the domain, and storytelling is a method that can help us to do that and to achieve that. And then, of course, in the end, hopefully we can define requirements, but we will do it together, and these requirements will be much better than what we just get from the domain expert, because the domain expert will typically have troubles, him or herself, too, to say what should be done. Domain experts know something about their domain, of course, but they don't know what should be done in a software system, and requirements, of course, a starting point for that. So we want to understand things better. I have brought you a little story. Storytelling is about stories. So let's look at this story. I'm reading it out loud. Soon after the tickets for the upcoming game are released, the customer calls and asks the cashier for a ticket reservation. So the cashier tries to find suitable seats in the ticketing system screen plan and suggests any available seats to the customer, which confirms the suggested seats. The cashier then blocks the confirmed seats.
Sorry to interrupt you. Anybody can follow now? This is a simple example, and in this
we have a football fan over there who is a domain expert.
So domain expert, But you get the point. We're starting about this thing and have the overview, and when we're going to the details, it's getting, at some point, quite complex.
And at the same time, it's really just a simple scenario. So there is a lot of new information, of course, pouring down on us when we read such a thing or when we get it told. And we imagine somebody, the ticket cashier, tells about his own workplace. Yes, but it's not so easy. Imagine the domain is a much more complex one. We don't know anything about it. Then we will have lots of new terms and maybe don't understand anything as software developers in the room. And then what typically also happens, it's not so easy to admit that, right? So maybe the developers will stay silent and say, yes, yes, and of course, and this is right, and this is how it should be done because the domain expert says it. But then we gain really nothing. So what do we really do in domain storytelling? We try to make it a shared, a collaborative process, a collaborative thing, and we visualize a lot. So what we do here is we visualize really just sentences. Yeah? So when we remember the start of our story, we had 2 sentences. And I put them here on 3 sticky notes each. Yeah? So we have the customer who calls and asks for the ticket reservation, and we have the cashier as a second step who tries to find suitable seats. These were the first 2 sentences of our little story here. Now, I'm really making it complicated, right? Because I'm using 3 sticky notes for just 1 sentence. So what's the idea behind this? It's a really simple one. All of us kind of know from school. In a simple sentence about an activity, there is a subject, goes on the yellow one. There is a verb, which is kind of telling us something about the activity, goes on the blue one. And there is also typically an object. We relate to something, we work with something. So there's an object in the sentence. So at this point, it's really not an object, you know. Forget all you have learned about objects. It's really just the object in the sentence, the verb in the sentence. And we can, the nice thing with this is we can really do this and also be helpful as software developers to visualize this in this form, even without understanding a single word. Because we can detect, okay, there is a subject, there is a verb, I can detect it even if I don't understand it. So we visualize, now we can read. The customer calls and asks for a ticket reservation. We can reread.
Martin,
Daniel,
I have a question. Now, this is the typically example of how interaction can work. With whom is the customer calling?
Yes, this is actually a nice one. Maybe let me explain first. We now have basically a column here. So here the customer is calling and asking, and then the cashier as a second step is trying to find suitable seats and then suggest the available seats. Now, because I have made this work to really put this on separate sticky notes, I can now also move them a little bit. And I'm using this, you could say this little trick here, to move the object here to the cashier to make the sentence complete. So now actually the customer calls and asks the cashier for a ticket reservation, right? So let's also do this with the second sentence. The cashier tries to find the suitable seats. So where does the cashier try to find the suitable seats? In the ticketing system, of course. So we move the object here to the ticketing system and make our sentence complete. The cashier tries to find the suitable seats in the ticketing system. And now the cashier can suggest the available seats to the customer. So by using this really super simple method, we are not really modeling yet. We are visualizing a story. Now, when we continue with that, it could look like that. We basically have a sentence in each row. The customer confirms the suggested seats. The cashier blocks the confirmed seats. The ticketing system generates a reservation for us, and now the cashier can, of course, inform the customer about the reservation number. Very simple thing, and the tickets for the upcoming game are reserved in our ticketing system. So a very simple and yet super powerful feature of such visual stories, and actually of any story out there, is that we really focus here on a specific instance of how things could develop. Or you could also say on a specific example of how our business process could develop here. And then, of course, by the way, because Gojko Acic is sitting in the last row, I want to mention this is actually also specification by example at work, just applied to, you could say, business processes or user journeys. We are talking about a very specific example of what the user is doing or what is happening between these people. So in real life, we also reach out to make it even more specific. Yeah? This is rather simple yet, but we could also say, I wish to sit in a specific sector, and then the cashier would try to search in the sector and offer very specific seats. Yeah? Now we will also get into discussions, okay, but the story could also develop differently, right? What is if the customer actually rejects the seats? Then already in the beginning, our story would move on differently. So whenever we discover such a thing, we map assumptions about our story. And this is something I also want to highlight here. Here we have said, okay, the cashier suggests the available seats to the customer, but actually this is based on the assumption that the cashier actually finds suitable seats in the ticketing system. Yeah? So if it doesn't, then probably the story would develop differently. So whenever we discover such things, we map assumptions, and already by doing that, yeah, we can again focus, stay specific, continue with our specific story, but we don't forget that there are, of course, variants. Yeah? But not all of those variants need to be told so explicitly. Yeah? But we can rather work based on very good examples.
So I think we have now shown one of these tools, and what's happened in reality is that this is constructed during a discussion. So this interaction model, asking questions, putting up new stuff, remodeling the whole stuff, finding new options, derived stories. And this is the point where in the brain we are using, building up this model together, using the big part of the brain to develop something like that. Martin, I think this is...
Yes. So I also wanted to bring kind of a real-life example out of my own project work. So you see lots of these stories as they developed, of course, over time. Yeah? So we were again and again coming back to this board and adding stories and variants. So this is about a case management system for customer support department inside of a large organization. And we cannot look at the details because it's under NDA, but I can give you this overview. So you see there are some stories about support case creation, of course. So when the customer has a problem, he or she calls, and then we create such a case. And then we, of course, have the necessity to forward such cases, kind of redistribute our work between all our agents, taking care of the customers. And an important part in that project was also the skill-based routing, so that we actually kind of move our support cases to the best agent possible who actually has the skills to really work for the customer and do it right.
I think this is quite interesting from the visualization point of view, because typically when we think about support cases, okay, there's this one process, and what's happened here, there are multiple stories to tell. So maybe this is not only one process, so maybe these are smaller processes in some composition. So maybe there's a different thinking also about how we can implement the stuff, which is quite interesting. And to have to think about quite different aspects of the system. So.
Yes, and what you also see here quite well is that typically over time it then happens that you group certain things. So also this rearranging of all the things here is of course an ongoing process, because you discover and hopefully things get less messy over time. And this is so cool then, at least for software developers, it's always cool when the things become simple, then you think, okay, not everything we did here is totally wrong, at least. Yes, this grouping is sometimes also variants. You can see this here. We had here on the left-hand side kind of a happy development of this was information on the support cases needed from the customer, is this here. And then we had two variants, but we said, we just want to tell these two variants of this story for this part here. So we just moved it down here. We didn't have to repeat the upper part of this left-hand story.
So maybe to relate a little bit back to the beginning, the why. So I said about we should stop to tell somebody how to do something, but to ask somebody about what we want to achieve. So if we try to have a real life example, I'm using very often, so there's a stakeholder coming and he's saying, I need the following field in the system there. And then I'm asking question, what do you want to achieve? And at some point, the single field which he thought we needed could be that complex.
Yes.
So this is very often the thing where we talk with developers when we are discussing about estimation. It's just a simple field. No, it's that complex. And to have the power of visualizing the stuff and communicating the stuff is very powerful.
Yeah, maybe we should also emphasize another time that quite typically in such sessions, domain experts are at the center of what is happening here. So we are talking to somebody, maybe just one person, maybe 2 or 3 who are closely working together and understand something about their domain, what they are doing. But then it's very important that the software developers are also in the room, because we want to develop this shared understanding. So it's even more than this result on some whiteboard. It's important that we develop this shared mental model, this mental alignment, and that we participate in the process. So we also, as software developers, we gain this understanding. We can contribute to actually finding cool requirements, how we could work in the future with our technical knowledge. And this is the most important thing actually for me. This doing it together in the end.
So the point is, doing this together with domain experts will help domain experts also to understand the complexity. It's learning, it's continuous learning.
This is also a very good remark because domain experts, for example, tend to forget what's obvious for them, right? But then there are many things happening in the process which are obvious for experts. And if we want to support it with a new system, then for sure we want to support the obvious things too, and not just this tiny, complicated little thing that was a problem in the old system, right?
Okay.
Hey, so Daniel, kind of your turn, because you also brought something that you want to show us how you approach things in your projects.
So what we have seen now is an approach when we are discussing about details, going into the details, doing deep dive discussions, trying to bring all the stuff up. But there are some situations where going to the details is too early. And there I'm typically using 2 methods. One is the event storming and one is the event modeling. And these are 2 tools I'm often using nowadays together. So in the past I used them separate, and I was never sure when to use which of these tools. And for today, I thought I will bring my experience when you can use which tools and how it can help you to navigate when you want to have a big picture about the stuff, what you want to change or implement. So if we look at these both methods, on the left side, we have the event storming, and on the right side, the event storming, sorry. On the left side, the event modeling. And by design, now it's not readable, but as you know from before, you will get the slides. And if you look at these 2 methods, we see already there are multiple steps which are happening there. And now let's have a look, and we see there is some difference here in how we are using these tools. And now let's go a little bit deeper, what's happening.
So you're actually talking about 2 more methods, kind of,
yes.
But they are very
closely related and can be used very good together. So both methods start with a very simple approach. It's a brainstorming approach. So like these 2 methods are called event storming and event modeling. It's about something happening in the system or something happening in our processes. So we have here somewhere the example, the inventory was updated. There happened something. And we have the same also for the event modeling. So they start very similar. So to get this kind of big picture, what is happening, bringing all the stuff up. This is typically done in a brainstorming session with a group of multiple people, different roles with stakeholders and so on, testers, UX, and so on. So this is the first step. We really try to focus on bringing all these ideas up with some sticky notes. Then we switch to the second step. Now we are back again at the event storming session. There we want to bring in some order of all these events or facts which can happen. So the inventory update is somewhere here. And here we have some order information entered. So we somehow try to align. But at this step, we don't focus on the alignment. It should help us to identify the missing parts which we missed at the brainstorming session. So this is some point where we can see, okay, it's about something about which is called processes. So how are we working together? What is happening?
Mm-hmm. So it's actually also a timeline what we have here, from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, but
yeah, we are coming to a timeline, but we are really focusing on the missing parts on the missing information.
Yes, okay. So that's still messy, kind of.
It's kind of still messy, and typically what's happening if you're working with stakeholders, with domain experts, some domain expert is saying, okay, inventory updated, but there must, before something, the order which is added to somewhere, and so on and so on. So there must happen something before, which we typically, or very often, in the IT don't see. This could be maybe some manual process, which is not in the IT system, completely hidden. If we now look, how is event modeling approaching this? In the event modeling, we have a different focus. So in the event modeling, we're already at this point where we say, okay, we are now focusing on a plot, on a story, and we bring in the time. So in the event modeling, we already try to have this kind of timeline. We have to find the sequence, the order. We are focusing on the order. Mm-hmm. And we are very much into details, and we try also to identify what's the most important and what's the end goal. So quite different approach, different focus. Focus on the time, focus on the important stuff. So event storming, event modeling, different approaches. And the important point here, I don't care which method I use, we have to ask us the same question. We have at one point asked, do we have all the important stuff already here? And on the other side, we have to ask us the question, do we have it in the order?
Mm-hmm. Something I would like to mention now, there is actually again this idea of focusing on an example. So the reason why this is a single line is that we now decide for a specific way through our system, right?
Yeah. So it's typically a journey. It's called also a plot in the event modeling approach. Now look what's happening if we go the next step in this proof methods. Now we have the event storming back. So now that we know what's happening in our processes, we are now focusing on why it's happening. What are the causes that were involved and bring us to these changes. So we have again here somewhere the inventory updated, and we know when we have an inventory, we also have an inventory system. This is this purple sticky note. And we know, okay, there must be some trigger, so we have some user who did some checkout. So this is the point where we now focus about the inputs, the outputs, the triggers, and all this kind of stuff. And now we see the difference to the timeline, because we have maybe now identified, okay, there is the user here somewhere, here's some user, here's something with users. We don't have these errors in between, so maybe these are separate things. So maybe they are not on the same timeline. If we now go back to the event modeling, so following the idea of the journey in the event modeling, this is the next step, what we typically do in the event modeling. And here we now see the complete different picture of these proof methods. Here we already have things like UI mockups. We have some asynchronous processes which are happening, really focused on detail again. Like we had in the storytelling, we are here much more in the detail. Versus if we are going back, we are much more high level.
Because you are comparing it to the storytelling, I would like to point out in the storytelling, we typically just look at DIT as one thing, because we intentionally don't want to dig into what is happening inside of the system and jump into that solution design. Whereas here, it seems to be actually rather the goal to do that and find out what is happening inside of parts of the system.
Of course. So in the event storming, typically we see the inventory system as a system, and that's good enough. If we now go to the event modeling, we are looking into the system. So what's happening into the system, or what's happening when jumping over the system, so when we're doing our journey. And in the end, we will get something like this big picture. So it's similar to what Martin showed us. We have some kind of groupings there. We have some payment processing, some order fulfillment. So this is where we are in the event storming, are at the point that we have the bigger picture. What should happen, what is happening in our systems. We get the idea. And if you have now the complete picture about the event modeling, we are going much more into the details, and this could be a microservice application where we have an inventory microservice, an authentication microservice, payment. So we really focus deep dive. And as you can see now, if we put all the stuff together, so in the event modeling, in the event storming, above there, this small purple sticky note, this represented the system. And in the event modeling, we were going into the system and looked at how it's implemented into the system. So at the top, the big picture event storming. We want to have some overview about the big picture, what we are doing. Typically, we use it when we are trying to align multiple departments to find a common understanding. And then when we are going on deeper into the systems, then we can use these tools like the process level event storming, same method, but on a different abstraction level, and then going deeper and using the event modeling approach to look into the system and think about how something is working into the system. And this idea to align different methods on different abstraction levels, we haven't invented by ourselves. This is an idea we have seen in the C4 modeling. It's a model for visualizing software architecture, where we also have this approach that we have these different kind of abstraction levels. And the idea of these abstraction levels is it's working like a zoom level, like Google Maps. So if we look at Google Maps, we have the world. And if we want to go into the details, we zoom much more into the details. So going into the details. And what we can now do is, with this kind of approach, and it's shown here, we can zoom inside different parts of our models which we are building up. So this can mean this part is a zoom in of the stuff above. This part is a zoom in only on this part. If we think about documenting our software systems and documenting our processes, now we can see we don't have these big processes, but we have very small specific parts we can maintain independently. It's quite an interesting approach, and which helps us to maintain also the stuff. Yes, so the point of this is, if we have these different abstraction levels, we can also talk to different audiences. Because if we talk to the management and we need some key decisions, we don't want to talk about all these details, but we want to talk about the big picture, the process level. If we want to optimize an organization, how departments are working together, we are looking at the big picture. If we are optimizing how many clicks we need in a system, then we are optimizing at this level. And this is how we can use these tools and how these tools can help us bringing our organizations also to the next step. Yeah. Anything I have left?
No, Actually, I would say there's not much left to say, but I'm sure you are totally confused now because there are so many different methods that we can apply here in the, under this umbrella of collaborative modeling. But then in the end, all of them are really super simple. So they are made in a way so that you can apply them right away. Yeah? And what we wanted to share with you here is a little bit how to get started, because those are kind of the 5 methods that we illustrate here with this star that we really like to use on a regular basis. And they, of course, are the right tool for very different situations. By the way, it's nice that you take a photograph, but you don't have to, because in a minute we will also share the link to this board, and then you can investigate for yourself and maybe also get back to us if you have some questions. So what we do with this little star here is there are several questions that may pop up. You have some problem in the middle of your project, so you want to achieve something. Yeah? You need, you sense that you need something in your project. Yeah? So what do I need to achieve is the question here on the red sticky. And then you ask yourself, okay, which people do I need? Who has the knowledge? Yeah? Whom would I like to invite, or who do I have to speak to? Then maybe also which style of interaction can help me here? Yeah? What is the best way to interact with these people in this situation? Leads us to a method as a proposal, which you could use, yeah? And then also to a result, hopefully, that you get out of it, yeah? On the green sticky. And this is how to read this little star here. I just want to give you an example, or maybe let's quickly go back. We have here the big picture event storming on the top. We have the storytelling here on the left. We have a tool we didn't mention today. It's context mapping coming out of domain-driven design, which we really like. The process level event storming and the design level event modeling. So let's look at the big picture up there. Yeah? So when you need some strategic alignment in your organization. Yeah? So you have a project and you sense, okay, there are several departments involved, and not to say maybe even silos involved. Yeah? So everybody knows about their own thing, but then how do I bring the people together? Yeah? So you need some alignment on a very high level. So you want to, of course, invite people from all those areas. Yeah? So maybe you also end up with a rather large group of people from very diverse backgrounds. And then what really helps you is this parallel style of working. Yeah? So when you have a method where everybody can contribute and can do something in the workshop, yeah? These highly parallel, maybe even to a certain degree chaotic methods help you here, yeah? To explore and discover stuff that is hidden. So you visualize what's going on in the minds actually. And then this big picture event storming is really the tool of your choice here. Yeah? And to end up with some defined discovery, you could have some expectation management at the beginning of your workshop and say, okay, today, across all these departments, we want to find out the single most pressing issue that we actually want to focus on in the next 2 or 3 weeks or months, depending how agile your organization already is. And then this method of parallel chaotic brainstorming, discovering, will help you a lot. Yeah? The main storytelling I mentioned, here you are more focusing on already some customer, some user perspective that you want to have. Yeah? And most probably it's a rather small group of people you want to interact with. But what you need is a very super simple method, which really also allows you to focus on these requirements gatherings phase. Of your project, or that reiterative work in that area. And then this storytelling really comes in handy, because it's so simple and so cool to refocus people again on one specific story, not to jump into the solution design and and tell software developers how they should be doing things, but rather focus on how we work. And then we end up, of course, with this customer and user journey as a result, and a very rich one. We also know that from user story mapping, but this storytelling really helps you to create a very rich user or customer journey. And this is also, in my mind, what's so cool about it. Other methods, as I mentioned, just find your way with this little star. Also, here is actually the link now to the board. So now it's the time to take a picture. May I mention that we did speak about whether we should have a code here.
A QR code.
A QR code. But then we said, no, let's people take pictures.
So how we tricked you that you thought our contact data, we could say, with sharing a simple link. So
also because we want to invite you, if you go to the board and revisit some things, and have questions that you maybe cannot clarify now, please get in touch with us. We are also happy to have some conversation with you and help you. Thank you for having us. And if there are questions, of course, we would also be happy to answer some now.
Still 2 minutes.
Martin, musst du ein Stück rübergehen, wegen dem Foto.